Hello everyone and welcome to this lecture. My name is Burhanuddin and in this lecture we are going to learn about the layouts in Android. Okay, so we are going to basically learn about the constraint layout, that is the newest layout in the Android, and then we are going to learn about the linear layout and the relative layout. So first I am going to give you a basic overview about this layout, that what are these layouts about and how we can use them, and then we are going to basically design two layouts in different ways. First we are going to design that layouts using the constraint layout, then we are going to design them using the relative layout, and then we are going to design them using the linear layout, and then we are also going to see that how we can design those layouts using the combination of relative layout, linear layout and the constraint layout. So let's get started. So let's just click on the Android Studio and open it up. So now let's just click on the Start a New Android Studio project and select the empty activity and click on Next. So now let's just name our Android application as, let's just name it as Android Layout Demo. So now let's just click on the Finish button and let's just wait until the gradles are built successfully. So now as you can see, my gradles are built successfully. Now let's just hold the Control key and click on this activity main in order to open this activity underline main.xml file. Now let's just hide this project pane. And before getting into the layouts, let's just talk about the layout, that what are the layouts and why we need to use them. So layouts are basically a container which contains other UI components. So whenever we want to use any UI components such as image view, button, text view or the list view, we just need something that can hold those components. So that something which can hold these UI components is layouts. So there are basically three types of layout that we use. They are constraint layout, which is the newest of all of them, and then we have the relative layout and the linear layout. These three layouts have their own three different capabilities, that they have their different purposes for which we can use these different three layouts. But first let's just dive into the constraint layout and see what is the constraint layout all about. So let me just switch to the split view, and now let's just switch to the code view instead. And first of all, let's just talk about this XML file a little bit, that what is these things inside this root layout. So as you can see, as it specifies here, that my root layout is currently a constraint layout. The next thing that you can see is an XML NS namespace which specifies, and you must need to make sure that this namespace is always inside your layout file, because this namespace will specify that this layout is of type Android layout. Okay, so this namespace is must for your layout. The next thing we have is the tools namespace. This is also similar to this XMLS namespace, but this specifies is the tools that we are going to use inside our layout. And the next thing that we have is the layout width and layout height. Now we need to make sure one thing here, that the layout width or layout height of the root layout must be match parent always. We cannot use the wrap content here. For example, if I switch to the split view, let me just make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and let's just add, okay, let's just add one more text view here, or instead let me just remove this text view from here. Let's just give this text view a bit of size. Text size to be, let's just make it 250 dp or sp. Okay, it is too much I think, so let's just make it 100 sp. Okay, so now as you can see it properly. So now imagine instead of this match parent, let's just change the layout width to wrap content. So now as you can see, nothing happens because there is a text inside our root layout, that is the constraint layout. But if I remove this text view, as you can see that my layout is now not visible. So if I change the layout width of this root layout to wrap content, I won't be able to see my contents properly, or the elements that are inside my root layout properly, and as there will be queues together. So make sure that the layout width is always match parent, and same goes for layout height, that it should be match parent always. You cannot put the layout height to be wrap content, as the contents inside those layout will be squeezed inside if you put them as wrap content. Okay, so now let's just move on to the next thing. So let's just do one thing, create new layout file and design a layout. Okay, so first of all I want to show you that what we are going to actually design for as the first layout, and then we are going to move on to designing them in using 3 different layouts. Okay, so let me just open my artboard. Okay, so let me just clear this thing. Okay, so the first let's just specify the things that we are going to need for this layout. So first thing that I want to create is UI, sorry, this will be of layout 1. So let's just name it as layout 1. And the first thing that I want to create so first thing I need is a text view. So I'll say text view. Then I want edit text below this text view, so I will say edit text. Then I want an image view, and then I just want a button. Okay, so these are our requirements for this layout, that these are the things that we want inside our layouts. Okay, so let me just keep it aside. Okay, so now let's just design our layout first, that in order to visually get an idea that what we are going to get. Okay, so the first thing I want is a text view. So my text view will be right here. Okay, so it will say, let's just say, I am a developer. Okay, so the next thing I want is I want an image view below edit text, sorry, below this text view. So I will just draw an edit text here, which will say, this will say enter your name. Okay, now the next thing I want is an image view below this text view. So I want an image view below this text, edit text, and in below this image view I want a button. Okay, so let me just throw a rectangle here. Okay, so this button must say click me. So this is a layout that I want currently for my first design. Okay, so we are going to now design this layout inside our Android Studio using the constraint layout first, and then we'll move on to the linear layout and then to the relative layout. Okay, so let's just switch back to the Android Studio. Okay, so let's just close this split view into the design view, and now I don't want this text view, so I will just remove it. So first, before putting in some element, let's just put one text view instead. And now I want to show you something. Okay, so let's just, okay, so as you can see, here are some icons on the top. So let's just look at them one by one, and let's just see what are they about. So the first thing that you can see is this icon right here. So if I hover over this, it says view options. So what are the view options? So if I click on this, as you can see, that two things are checked here, that are show margins and the live rendering. So let's just click on or turn on this show all constraints too. So now as you can see, if I hover on this text view, I am not sure that you are able to see, but here is the dashed line that is moving on the left edge side of my UI screen. Okay, if you are able to see it, now you might be able to see it properly. So this is showing me the current constraints of my layout, and constraint layout, as you can see. Okay, so now let's just add some constraints to this layout first. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, currently there are two constraints added. And let me just switch back to the split view, and as you can see that we were getting a problem in moving this constraint to the right side. That is because my current layout, that is the which is my root layout, that is the constraint layout, is set to be wrap content. So actually my text view is stuck inside my constraint layout because it was wrap content. So that is why I was unable to move it to the center. So to solve this problem, I just need to change this wrap content to match parent. So now, as you can see in the design section, that my layout is on the center of the screen, as the constraints are added on the left and on the right of my UI element. So the next tool that we have given here is auto connection. So this tool, this is actually a tool which allows you to automatically add the constraints whenever you place the UI components on the screen. So this is not a beginner friendly tool, so I will suggest you to keep this thing disabled. But as I am used to this layout, I am using it right now. So okay, so let's just do one thing. Let's just disable this thing in order to add the constraints manually. The next thing we have is a default margin. So what we can do is whenever we add a UI component, we can actually give this a default margin value. So whenever we will add any UI component, it will add that default margin for us. And now as you can see, as I have disabled this auto connection, it hasn't added a constraint for me. So I need to add the constraint manually. So now let's just add the constraint on the left and right. Now as you can see, this layout has already a default margin of 8 dp from the left and right. Okay, so the next thing is this clear or constraint. So this thing is very useful, that if you have created your design but you are not happy with your design, so you can just click on this clear or constraints, and it will automatically clear all the constraints that you have already added. So if I click on this, as you can see, it gives me an alert that delete all the constraints in your current layout. So if I click on yes, it will delete all my constraints, and now I need to add my constraints again. Okay, so the next thing is inference constraints. So inference constraints is again a thing which will add your constraints automatically. So as you can see, as I clicked on inference constraints, let me just click on this clear or constraints again in order to show you properly that how does it work. And let me just close this palette section and component tree as well. So now as you can see, these are my two UI components, and if I click on this infer constraints, as you can see, the constraints are added automatically. So if I want to move them, I can move them. Okay, I can alter this position from right here to here. Okay, so this is how infer constraints works. So the next thing we have is the pack. Okay, so if you hover on this icon, you can see it shows me pack. So what is pack? So if I click on this, it shows me two values that are expand horizontally and expand vertically. So this means that I can actually expand these UI elements in both the directions, that are that are vertical and horizontal. So if I click on expand horizontally, as you can see, it has expanded that my UI components horizontally through the width of my screen. Okay, and if I click if I select this UI component and then I change the pack value to be expand vertically, as you can see, it has expanded my UI component to the bottom of my screen. So now let's just move on to the another icon, and which that says align. So using this, you can actually align your UI components inside your root layout. So I can just click on this horizontal and it will automatically assign my UI component to horizontally, but that is to the center of my parent. But as you can see that it is not seems to be horizontal. That is because of one thing, and we are going to look at it in just a moment. But let's just finish this tools that we are getting on the top, and the last one is the guidelines. So basically you can use these guidelines tools to add a guideline on your layout in order to show your junior developer or for yourself that from where you want to start putting in your constraints and where you want to end. So these are basically the like a rulers that we have in a Photoshop. As you can see, there are margins around my layout because we have set the default margin to the 8 dp. Okay, so let's just talk about this UI component, that why is it not centers. So there are basically three types of constraints actually. So if you move on to the right side of my screen, as you can see here inside the constraint widget, as you can see right here, if I hover on this thing, it shows me fixed. That means that my constraint value is fixed and that is hard coded. So that is the thing with this UI component. If I click on hover on this, it shows me wrap content. That is my layout constraint value is wrap content. If I click on that, as you can see, it is now hard coded. If I click on this again, now as you can see, it changes to mesh constraint. And as I click on this thing, notice here inside my layout width that based on these clicks, the value inside my layout width is getting changed. So if I click, and currently as my layout width or my constraint on the left side of this UI component is mesh constraint and my layout width is 0 dp. So if I click on this and make it to wrap content, my layout width is again changed to wrap content. And if I change it to fixed, it is changed to fixed. My layout width is changed to 23 dp. That is the hard coded value. So as you can see, here is a 128. So if I want to align this properly in the horizontal way, I can just change it to the 0 dp. And now as you can see, my UI element is aligned on my screen. Okay. So these were the basics for the constraint layout, and now let's just design our layout. So first let's just remove these two layouts. Okay, so now let me just zoom out a little bit, and now let's just open the palette section. Let's just switch back to our design, that what we need. So as you can see, the first thing that we need is a text view which says I am a developer. So let's just select the text view here and drop it here. So now let's just add the constraints here. So constraint to a left and right and on the top, and let's just open this attribute pane, and let me just give it let's just change the width of this constraint to the mesh constraint and the layout height So okay, so I don't want to give this a layout height. Instead, let's just change this text view, and I want to call it as I am an Android developer. So I'll say I am a Android developer. Okay, click on enter. As you can see, we have our text value here. Let's just increase this text size as it is too small to see. So I'll search for text size here. So let's just keep the text size to 24 SP. So it is more visible now. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. So little bit more. Let's just put it 50 SP. Okay. This is enough. The one more thing I need is I want the text to be centered inside my text view. So what will I do is I will set the gravity attribute and I will set it. Click on this flag here and I will set it to center horizontal. And okay, so as you can see now, my text inside my text view is centered. Okay, so if we move back to the UI that we have designed for our layout, as you can see, there are some margins from the top between this text view and the top. So let's just put a little bit margin here. And let's just keep it to 68 dp and it's fine. And one more thing that I want is I want the text, let's just keep the text to be black, and I just want the background to be of red color. So let's just search for the background attribute here, and now let's just select a color. So let's just put the red color here. So now as you can see, the background color of my text view is changed to be red. And let's just do one thing. Let's just add some padding inside my text view UI component in order to make it separated from the borders. So I just add the padding. Okay, so I want to just remind you about a difference between the padding and the margin attribute, that when to use the margin attribute and when to use the padding attribute. So what this margin attribute actually does, it adds some space or a margin value outside your UI components. Okay, and what does the padding attribute does, that it adds some value or padding inside your UI components. So right here I want to add some space inside my UI components, so I will use the padding attribute. So I'll just keep the padding from every side to 8 dp. As you can see, you can also add the separate padding values as padding from the left, from the top, from the right, and from the bottom. But I just want the padding value from every side to be 8 dp, so I just put that. But as you can see that mistakenly I have actually added the padding to this constraint. Instead, I wanted the padding to be added inside my layouts. So instead, I will just remove this padding from here, and I'll just put the padding value inside this text view UI component. So now as you can see, we have some space between the border, that is the end of my text view UI component, and the text is residing inside the text view UI component. Okay, so the next thing we want to add is an edit text which will be below my text view UI component. So let's just switch back to the Android Studio and drag a text edit text. So actually the edit text is this plain text, so let's just drag and drop it here. Okay, so let me just add the constraint from the left, from the right, and from the top. As you can see, I am adding the constraint to this my top constraint to this text view UI component instead of this parent layout. So let's just give this a little bit of margin. and let's just change the text size. Let's just increase the text size to 30 sp. Okay. Let's just run our application to see how does it looks. Okay. So let's just rebuild our project. So as I'm not connected to the internet, it is giving me an error. So let me just turn on my internet connection. Okay, so I've turned on my internet connection, and let's just rebuild our project. So I'll go to build and rebuild my project. So now my Gradle must be built successfully. Okay, so my Gradles are built successfully. Let's just run our app and see how our app looks. Okay, so as you can see now, here is our text view that we have added, which says I am an Android developer, and here is the edit text that we have added. So the first thing I want to do here, as you can see, there was an annoying text that was pre-filled inside my edit text, and I don't want to give the user that text before adding anything. So I just need to remove that text from my edit text, and let's just, instead of that text, we actually need to give the user a hint value which says enter your name. So let's just put that hint value instead of that hard-coded text. So to do that, I will go to my activity_main.xml layout file again, and let's just select this text view, and let me just clear this. And first I want to clear the text, so let's just search for text, and let's just, as you can see, here is a pre-filled value which says name. So I just need to remove this value in order to clear that. And the second thing that I want to add here is a hint value. So as you can see, we can type here hint, and now I can specify the hint value. So for me, the hint value will be enter your name. So I'll say enter your name and click enter. Now as you can see, the hint value is shown here, but the problem is the color of the hint value is too dark. So user can misunderstand this thing as a pre-filled value. So in order to change the color, we have our attribute named the text color hint. So actually I want to alter the value of this attribute. So I will change the color to light gray. Okay, so now as you can see, the value or the text that we have entered as a hint inside this edit text has been lightened a little bit. So let's just rerun our application and see the changes, that how does it looks. So now as you can see, we are getting a hint that enter your name, and now I can enter my name here. Okay, so this is how this thing works. So now let's just add another UI component of our inside our layout. So that one will be an image view. So let's just put an image view below this text view. Okay, so let's just move this edit text a little bit upside, okay, to make room for my image view. And from the palette section, the image view will be inside my widgets section. So I will just drag and drop the image view from here, and I'll put it right here. And as I drop that image view, it is telling me to pick an image to show inside my image view. So let's just select this avatar as we don't have any image to show up to the user right now. So I will select this default image, and then I will just click on OK. So as you can see, my image view is right here. And now let's just add some constraints to the right, to the left, and to the top. and let's just move this thing a little bit down. Okay, so now this thing looks proper. So now if we switch back to our UI design, we have finally a button inside my layout. So let's just put the button. Let's just first run our application to see how does it looks. So as you can see, is it installed? Okay, so we are unable to see my image view. And why is it so? We have an error here which says, okay, so that might not be the problem. Okay, so we have a very interesting error here. So I think that the problem is we haven't specified any width or height of the image view. So that might be a problem. So we have already wrapped content here. Just switch back to the split view. Okay, so it is getting the image from Tools SRC, and this thing might not work. So instead of Tools SRC, I will choose Android SRC. And now I'll just change. I need to add a drawable file. So let's just go back to the resource main, or open the project main, open the resource rest folder, then drawable, and then right click on the drawable folder and go to new and image asset. So now we can select any image from here. So let's just select a clip art instead. So I want this one. Okay, and I want the color to be white. So I will change it to white. Choose. Okay, so click on next, and let's just name it. It will be named as IC Launcher Play Store. Okay, so let's just click on finish. So now let's just change. So where is it? Okay, so project is getting synced. Okay, so we need to rebuild our project. So there was an error. Yeah, this one is empty, that's why. So let's just change it to drawable IC foreground. Or I don't want that one. So it was IC background, I guess. No. I guess my image is not added here. So let's just add it again. It was image asset, and next I want to name it as hello. Click on next, and now let's just change the color to red instead. Choose next and finish. Now it is added. So let's just move back to my activity main. Let's just close other tabs as I don't need them, and now I will select the hello foreground. Okay, so here is my image view. So now let's just run our app again and see how does it looks. So now you can see our little image view here. Okay, so now let's just put a button here. So let me add a button. So let's just give the layout width. Instead, let's just add the button via using a visual, visually, or from the design section instead of from the writing the code for that. So let me just switch back to the design view, and let's just drag and drop a button which will be inside the button section. So I will just drag and drop the button here. So let's just add the constraints here to the left, on the top and on the bottom. Or let's just do one thing. Let's just remove the constraints and let's just try. Oops, I have removed accidentally the constraint for all of my layouts. So let's just don't panic and let's just invert the constraints, and now as you can see the constraints are automatically added for my UI components. So the thing that I wanted to do is with that button. So I want to change the, actually if we turn on my design, as you can see the button is getting a height and a width. So let's just switch back to the Android Studio and give this a layout width of match parent and layout height of 40 dp. So as you can see, if I try to enter 40 dp here, now you can see some heights for this layout. And let's just put the margin. I want some margin around this button, so I will put the margin value to be 20 dp. Okay, so now as you can see, here is my button. So now let's just add some text to this button. And as we have discussed, my text should say click me. Click on enter. So now let's just change the text size and the gravity. So I'll say gravity to be, what happened, to be center horizontal and vertical. Okay, and now let's just increase the text size. I want the text size to be 30 sp. That's fine. And change the background color of the button. So I'll say background and I'll set it to this blue. Okay, so now this looks fine. So now let's just run our application and see how does it looks. So now as you can see, here is our application up and running, and we have the same design that we have created inside this whiteboard. So as you can see, here is our text view, our edit text where we can write our text, and then we have an image view below that edit text, and we have a button. So we have created this layout using the constraint layout. Now I want to tell you one thing, that constraint layout is newest of all the layouts, but it is very useful and very handy layouts, because whenever we are designing a layout for an application, we go very deep down in the hierarchy of adding the components. So in that manner, the constraint layout helps us a lot, especially when we want to add the two different UI components on the top of each other. So the constraint layout is a very useful thing. So now let's just design this layout again with the help of a linear layout. So for that we are going to create a new layout file. So let's just create a new layout file, and for that what we'll do, we'll right click on this layout folder and go to new and layout resource file. So one thing I want to show you here, that there is a certain naming convention that we need to follow with the while naming an XML file. That is, we have one simple rule that we cannot use a capital letter while naming our layout file. So as you can see, if I turn on my caps lock and type capital KA, it is showing me an error that K is not a valid file-based resource name character, and it says that file-based resource names must contain only lowercase a to z or from digit 0 to 9 or an underscore. So we cannot use space to separate two different letters or two different words, but we can actually use the underscore in order to separate two different words. So let's just name this layout as the linear layout mastery. Okay, so I'll change the root element. Let's just put the root element to constraint layout right now, and we'll change it later. And let's just click on this. Okay, so as you can see, our layout will build right now. Okay, so let's just sync our project for once. Okay, so now as you can see, our layout is successfully built now. And now I want to show you one thing, that let's just first change the layout to linear layout first. So I just want to remove this constraint layout and I'll change it to linear layout. Okay, so the one thing that you need to know about the linear layout, that the linear layout is the simplest and the easiest layout of all to use. Okay, so the one thing that I love about the linear layout, that I don't need to add any constraints or relation between my UI components. I can just simply drag different or multiple linear layouts and I can place my UI components inside that linear layout. So it makes my life of designing layout so easy. So that depends on the personal choices. You will see me using this linear layout a lot throughout this course. But for now, let's just design our layout that we have designed here using the linear layout, and we will discuss the different attributes about this linear layout throughout designing this layout. Okay, so let's just switch back to the design view and let's just close this. Okay, so let's just keep this palette section open, that as we want to add different components. So first let's just add a text view here. So I'll click on this text view and drag and drop this text view here. So as you can see, I don't need to add any constraints here. So I can just simply change the text value to be, let's just change the text to I am a Android developer. Okay, and click on enter. Let's just increase the text size. I'll change the text size to 50 SP. Okay, and let's just center the text. I'll say gravity. To center horizontal and center vertical. Okay, so now as you can see, it is center. Let's just change the background. So I'll say background to be red. Okay, and I want to add some margin. So if you remember, when we were designing the constraint layout, we were just dragging this layout a little bit downwards, and it was automatically adding some constraints on the top of the layout. But that thing is not possible with the linear layout. So what we need to do in order to add the margin is to manually add some margin. So I will just type in here margin, and now I can just add some margin value to this layout. So let's just add 68 dp as we have kept inside our constraint layout. But as I have put this 68 dp here, it will add 68 dp from every side. So I'll just remove this from here and I'll put it here to the margin top. And now as you can see, we have some margin from the top. Now the next thing we want is the padding inside my linear layout text view. So I'll just say padding. So I'll just add the padding value from every side to be 8 dp. Okay, so now that's fine. We have our first UI element inside our linear layout. So the next thing we want to add is an edit text view. So let's just go to the let's just drag and drop this plain text and add it to the linear layout and see what is happening here. So as you can see, as I added the edit text inside my linear layout, it is getting added next to my text view. Okay, but that is what I don't want. I want this edit text to be below of inside my linear layout and to be below of my text view UI component. So how can I do that? So the reason for this edit text getting added next to the text view is that by default the orientation of a linear layout is set to be horizontal. So we need to change that orientation from horizontal to vertical. Now if we look on the bottom left of my screen, inside my component tree, inside and with the root layout, that is my linear layout, it says that linear layout, and in brackets it says horizontal. So it is saying me that my currently my linear layout is set to be horizontal. So in order to put things vertically inside my layout, I need to set it to vertical. So how can I do that? So let's just search for an attribute named as orientation. So I'll say orientation. Let's just select this linear layout first, and then I will search for orientation. And now as you can see here, from here I can select this vertical in order to set the layout to vertical. And as you can see, as I set this to vertical, my layout is completely changed now. So let's just switch back to the split view to see what are the changes that have happened inside that inside my code. So as you can see, we have some code here. So I don't want to the layout weight right now. I will okay, so let me explain you. Okay, so let's just remove this layout weight for now, and I will explain you in about a minute that why there was layout weight and why my UI components have been expanded. So this actually might have seemed to spoil my surprise that what we need to do. Okay, so we will talk it about later. So let's just close this split view and switch back to the design view. And the thing that I want with this edit text is I want to put it right here. So let's just add some margin value here. So I will say margin, and okay, so I want a margin from the top. So I'll say margin top to be, let's just put it of 30 dp. That will be enough. And let's just put a margin left to be 30 dp as well. Instead, let's just put the gravity attribute. As I want to center the UI component, instead of gravity I will use layout gravity. So I will say layout gravity, and I will set it to center horizontal and center. I don't want center vertical, it is fine. Okay, and now let's just remove this text. Remember, we have that unwanted text inside our edit text. So let's just remove this, and let's just put a hint value instead. And I will say hint to be enter your name. And as you can see, we have a hint color of gray by default, so we don't want to alter that thing. And the next thing we want inside my linear layout is an image view. So as you can see how fast and easy is to design things inside my linear layout, but again it has its own cons. But we don't want to mention them here. You will notice that problems with the linear layout and the relative layout and the constraint layout too while getting and learning throughout this course. So let's just keep that thing aside for now, and let's just put some margin between these two. So I will say margin, and I will say margin top to be 30 dp. Okay, that's fine. And now what I want is a button below on the bottom of my screen. So I will just drag and drop a button from here and add it right here. And I want this this button at the bottom of my screen. So what will I do is I will say layout gravity of this button to be bottom of my screen. Okay, and I need to set it center bottom vertical. Click for okay. So now as you can see, this is our layout. Okay, now what we want, okay, there is an error with my image view, so let's just solve this error first. What does it says? Okay, so we are again using the vector, so let's just switch back to the split view. and let's click on this image view. Okay, so as you can see, we are using the src compact. So there are basically two attributes available that are of src and src compact. We usually use the src when we want to use vector assets inside our application. These are the small icons that we use for the settings or other thumbnails kind of icons that we want to use inside our Android app. But if we want to use the images inside our Android application, we use src. And so remember this difference, that whenever we want to use any icons inside our Android application, we will use src compact, and whenever we want to use an image inside our Android application, we will use src. So I will just say src here, and now as you can see, the error will be gone. Okay, so now let's just run our application and see how does it looks. Okay, so the application will run, but it will not show this layout, and you will see in a minute, as you can see, that this layout is not showing. The reason for this is inside our activity main, that is the main activity.java file, we have set the default layout to this activity underline main.xml layout file. So in order to view this linear underline layout.mastery.xml file, we need to change that. So how we can do that? Okay, so it is very simple. Trust me, it's very simple. So let's just go back to the Java and activity main activity.java file, and here we can see this line of code which says set content view. So basically we need to change this layout from activity main to linear layout mastery. So basically what this line does is it says a layout for this particular Java file, and whenever the application is getting run or getting open, when the user clicks on the application, this activity files get run, and the layout associated with this file, this Java file, is getting shown to the user. Okay, so let's just run the application again and see our linear layout. So now as you can see, here is our linear layout. But now there is one very magical thing that I want to show you about the linear layout. Okay, so remember one thing, this thing is only available with the linear layout, and it is not available with any other layout. So what I want to do is switch back to this XML file. Let's just close this project pane, and let's just switch back to the design view. So now what I want is, I want that every UI components inside my layout must take same space. That means if my value of space that I have inside my layout or on the screen is 100, then I want the every UI component to take equal space. That is, if I have 1, 2, 3, 4 UI components, what I'll do, I'll divide this 100 by 4. So I'll just simply say 100 divide by 4, and as you can see, the answer is 25. So I want that every UI component must take 25% of space inside my screen. So how can I do that? And so take this thing as a challenge and try to solve this thing by yourself by pausing the video. And if you are unable to find the solution, try to search on Google that how we can divide the UI components equally on the screen inside our linear layout, and you will definitely find a solution. But if you are still unable to find a solution, switch back to the video and follow along. So let's just what I want to do actually is, we have an attribute named as layout weight. So what does layout weight actually does is it assigns certain weight value with our UI components, which will specify that how much space will be taken by that UI component. So as you can see right here, I have this attribute named as layout weight. So if I write 1 here and click on enter, it will say that this text UI element will take one third or one portion of my total weight available. Okay, so basically that's the thing. So as you can see now, as I assigned 1 here, the my text view component has been enlarged by its height. Okay, so let's just do the same thing with the image view and see what happens. So if I click on if I enter 1 and enter, as you can see, the height of my image view increased 2. So that's how magical this layout weight is. So if I assign the layout weight to be 1 to every element on the screen, as you can see, now every element on my screen is taking 25% of my total weight available. Okay, so this is how you can use the layout weight attribute, but I don't want to specify the layout weight to be 1 for the edit text and button. So now if let's just remove this one from this text view also. Okay, so now if I run the application now, as you can see, the button is on the bottom of my screen. And the best thing about using this layout weight is, and this is why I love this layout weight attributes a lot, is that it is irrespective of the screen size. That I don't have to think about the different screen sizes. What happens if the screen of the device is small or large. It will automatically adjust the elements according to that proportion. So I don't need to specify the hard-coded value for the different UI elements. Okay, so this is the beauty of the linear layout, and this is why I use the linear layout a lot. So let's just move on to the final layout that we are going to learn in this lecture, is the relative layout. And it is surprisingly again, it is surprisingly more interesting layout, and it is somewhat similar with the constraint layout. So we will learn about that. So let's just switch back. Let's just create the new layout. So I'll click on this res folder and right click on this layout file and click on new and click on layout resource file in order to create a new layout. So now we have learned about the constraint layouts, we have learned about the linear layouts, and now we want to learn about the relative layout. So let's just type here relative. Remember, we cannot write capital letters and we cannot add spaces too. Okay, so instead of space, we are going to use the underscore. Okay, so now let's just click on the OK and let's just build our layout. Okay, so my layout is ready. So let's just close this project man and switch back to the split view. So what I want is I want to change this constraint layout to the relative layout. Now let me just open the constraint layout file. Okay, so if you remember that we have some attributes known as constraint. Okay, so in constraint layout, what does this constraint attribute does is it basically it was adding some relation between two UI elements. So that same thing is happening here inside the relative layout, that it is adding a relation between two UI elements. Okay, so let's just switch back to the design view and design our layout in order to learn about this relative layout. Okay, so the first thing we need is a text view on the top. So I will just add a text view on the top, and as you can see, as same as the constraints, we were getting these icons or this round circular button type thing, and we can drag them in order to add the relation among the layout. But if this was a constraint layout, as I add the constraint here, this layout should have changed its position from here to here, but in case of the relative layout it is not doing so, because it is just adding the relation to with this UI element, that this UI element is this far away from this side of the screen. Okay, so I can alter my position with respect to that. Again, I will just remove this constraint here. Okay, so now let's just give this and as you can see, if I hover on this circle right here, it is showing me an cross icon. If you want to remove this relation, I can just simply click on this, and as you can see, that relation is now removed. Okay, so now let's just change the text view. So I will change the text view to I am an Android developer. I am a Android developer. Okay, now click on enter. So now as you can see, the text is squeezed inside my text view UI component. This is because the width of my text UI component is currently set to wrap content. Okay, so first I need to solve that. So in order to do that, I can just simply change it to match parent. Okay, but still the layout width is same. That is because I haven't added a relation. So I need to add the relation from right. Okay, so now as you can see that the width is set to match parent, and the next thing I want to do is increase the text size. So let's just type here text size, and I will change it to 50 sp. Okay, so there is a margin from on the right side, so we can remove that thing. Okay, so I'll search for margin, and as you can see there is a margin value, and I will just remove it, 0 dp. Okay, so now I want to center this thing. So okay, so instead of designing this thing inside the design view, I want to show you how to design a relative layout inside a code view. So it will be more easier for you to design a relative layout with a code instead of designing, because you just have to stretch things out and do the stuff which is very annoying sometimes. So we are going to switch back to the code view and design our relative layout. So as you can see, we have our text view here, and we have an ID for the text view, because while designing a relative layout, you must need to identify every UI components individually in order to specify their relations. Okay, so this is like if you want to specify relation between father and the son, you need to identify between them that who is the father and who is the son. So that's the thing inside with the relative layout. So let's just switch to a split view. Okay, so now as you can see our design, so the thing that we want is we want to add some margin from the top. Okay, so as you can see there is a margin from the end and the right, and we will add a margin top to be 68 dp. Okay, now as you can see we have some margin from the top, and let's just change the background to be red, and the red will be 00 FF. Okay, so let's just put it this tint color, bluish color instead. Okay, so now I want my text to be centered, so I will say gravity to be center horizontal. Actually I don't need to use the vertical because the layout orientation will be of horizontal. Okay, and layout is wrap content from the height, so I don't need to horizontally vertically align my text inside my text view component. So that's it for this layout, and now I want the edit text below this. So I'll just select an edit text, and I'll set the layout width to the match parent and layout height to be wrap content. So the next thing I want to do is assign this thing an ID, because I want to identify this UI component. So I will say ID and I'll just simply say EDT. Okay, so now as you can see, currently we have our edit text on the top of my text view UI component, but I don't want that. I want my edit text to be on the bottom. So how we can do that? It's very simple. Actually what I want is my edit text to be below of my text view, so I can actually specify that thing. So how we can do that is actually I can say layout below. I can use this attribute right here and I can explicitly specify the ID of the layout below which I want to put this layout of mine. So I can just say ID to be text view 2, which is the ID of my text view UI component. So I can just simply say that. And now as you can see that my edit text is below of this text view UI component. And no matter what happens, this text view will always stay below of my text view UI component, irrespective of the screen size. So remember that. And let's just assign some margin top to this relative layout as well. So I will say 30 dp. Okay, so this looks fine. And now let's assign a hint value. So I will say hint value to be enter your name. Okay, so now let's just increase the text size. So I'll set text size to be 24 dp. SP actually, following the conventions. And yeah, that's it for this edit text. Okay, so the next thing I want is the image view below this edit text UI component. So let's just add that thing. I'll say image view, and I will set the layout width to be wrap content, layout height to be wrap content as well. And now let's just select the image that we want to place inside my image view. So I will say src and hello foreground. And as you can see, my image view is currently on the top of my text view, but I don't want that. So I will just give this an ID and I will say image v. Okay, as you can see, I am giving the random ID because I don't want to use them, or I don't have to use them inside my Java code. So I am assigning them the random ID. But remember one thing, that when you are doing this in a real world project, always give a proper and meaningful name to your attributes or UI components, because later on you are going to use them inside your Java code. And the thing is, for the first time when you are creating those elements, you will remember what were that elements. But believe me, later on when you will try to change something, you will not understood that what name was assigned to which element. So there are a lot of confusions later on. So always remember to assign a proper ID to your UI elements. Okay. Okay. So let's just assign this layout below attribute to this image view, and it will be below to my edit text. So I'll just simply say layout below to be EDT. And now as you can see, it is below my edit text. But there is a problem now. If we look inside our UI that we have designed, my image view is at the center of my screen. So how can I do that? So I can, instead of using the layout gravity, what we used here inside our relative layout is a center in parent. So I can just simply add center in parent to be true, and I will simply say true in order to center this UI element inside my parent. Or what can I do? I can align this attribute separately, that is horizontally and vertically to be centered. That how I want. That is basically completely dependent on how I want to center my UI element. But for this tutorial, I think center in parent will be okay. So let's just finish this. We have nothing to do with that. Okay. So lastly, the thing that we want is a button. So I'll just simply say button, and the width will be of match parent and height will be of 40 dp. And let's just put some text here. So I'll say click me, and let's just increase the size of the text to be 24 dp, and that's it. Let's just assign an ID. So I'll say ID to be btn1. Okay, and I want this thing at the bottom. Okay, so we don't want this button at the bottom of the image UI component, but actually we want this button at the bottom of my parent. So I can say align bottom, and I'll just give this an ID of my parent, or I can just simply say align parent bottom, and I will set it to be true. And now as you can see, my button is at the bottom of my parent UI component. Okay, so let's just give this little bit more height, and now it is seen properly. So let's just run our application, and first let's just change the layout. So I'll say relative layout, and now let's just run our application. Okay, so as you can see, here is our relative layout. So till now we have designed this layout of us, this layout for the for our Android application with the constraint layout, with the linear layout, and with the relative layout. But now we want in real life, we are not only going to use these three layouts separately, but instead we are going to use these three layouts in a combination. So now we will design one more layout in with the combination of these three layout, and I wanted to show you that how we can combine these things together. Okay, so first let's just design our layout. So this will be my layout 2. Okay, and the things that I need is text view on the top. Then I need a button below this text view. Then I want the text view again, and then I want a button. Then I want the text view again, and then I want a button. But I want to create this text view and a button using the constraint layout, and the constraint layout will be my root layout as well. Then I want the relative layout to hold my text view and this button, and then I want my linear layout to hold this text view and this button. And then I want one more thing, that I want 9 buttons. I want 9 buttons aligned next to each other. Okay, and that is, I want that 9 button in a single row, and that 9 button should take equal portion of my screen. Okay, so let's just design that layout. Okay, so let me just clear this canvas or just remove this. Okay, so what I want now is a text view first. So I want a text view right here. Okay, then I want a button right here, taking the full width. Okay, then again I want a text view. Okay, let me change the color in order to differentiate between them. So this thing will be made with constraint layout. Constraint layout. Then I want a text view. And a button residing right here on the left side, and this thing will be made with the relative layout. Okay, then I want a text view again, which will be on the center of my screen. and the button which will be on the center of my screen as well, and I want them to be made with the linear layout. And finally, what I want is a row of 9 buttons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, again with the linear layout, and we need to figure out that how we can do that. So give this challenge a go and try to design this layout by yourself and see whether you are able to do that or not. Okay, remember that the root layout that we are going to use with this UI element will be of constraint type. So you can use any one of your choice. You can use RelativeLayout or linear layout, but for this tutorial I am going to use the constraint layout. So let's just switch back to the Android Studio and design this layout. So open the project pane and let's just create a new layout resource file. So open the rest folder, right click on the layout and new layout resource file. So I will name this layout resource file as final layout, and click on OK. Okay, so our layout is ready. So now let's just switch back to the split view, and we are going to design this layout via code. So let's just hide this palette section, and as you can see our root layout is of constraint layout. Or instead, let's just open this palette section and design our layout with the design view. So let's just simply drag and drop. Let's just turn on this auto constraint, and let's just put a text view right here as we want on the top, and then we want a button. Okay, so as you can see our UI components is added here, but the text the constraints are not added. Still, as we have enabled the auto connection, but still the constraints were not added. Now this is because the constraint layout is pretty much new to the Android Studio, and it can be buggy sometimes, so remember that thing. So let's just infer auto constraints, and it will be auto constraints will now be added to my UI elements. So I just want to change the width to the match parent. Okay, so now let's just change the text view to welcome to the course, and the text size to be 18 dp will be enough. Okay, so let me just change the root layout. So I will say final layout. Okay, so if I run the application now, we must be able to see our layout here. So let's just close the other tabs and let's just see. As you can see, this is our layout. Okay, we have a spelling mistake here. Okay, so now we want again a text view and a button inside our constraint layout, but now I want this to be added inside the relative layout. So the thing is, you can add multiple layouts inside the layout. So I can just add a relative layout inside my constraint layout. So I can just simply say relative layout, and now I'll set the width to be match parent and the height to be wrap content. Remember I told you why we have put the width to the match parent, because of the thing that we have saw inside the constraint layout. Okay, now let's just add the constraint to this relative layout. I want it to the bottom of my this button. So I'll say constraint, or first, okay, let's just add it, constraint bottom of button 3. Okay, as you can see now inside my blueprint that relative layout is now added beside this button. Okay, so now we will add our UI components inside this relative layout. Remember, notice one thing, that we have IDs inside our constraint layout UI components also, because we want to uniquely identify the things. Okay, So the next thing that I want is the text view and the button. Let's just switch back to the design view. So here it is, and it should be on the aligning to the left. Okay, so let's just put a text view with the width of match parent and the height of wrap content, and let's just put the text value to be this is inside RelativeLayout. Okay, that's fine. So the next thing I want is change the text size. So I will set text size to be 24 dp as well. Oops, sp. What I put it here? Is it dp? No, I want it to be sp. Okay, so the next thing is to assign the id. So I'll say txt1, and I want a margin. If I zoom in, as you can see, you are unable to see this text view as it is currently behind this button. So what can I do is layout. We have actually specified the constraint bottom, so instead I can say constraint top to be at the bottom of this button. So now as you can see, here is our text view. So inside this RelativeLayout, I want one more thing, and that is the button. So I will add the button here, layout width to be wrap content and the height to be 40 dp as well. Okay, so the text, let's just put the text to be button, and the id, or we actually don't need the id here, but no, actually we does need the id here. No, actually we does need the id here. So I'll say id to be bt and rel as it is inside the RelativeLayout, and I need to specify the relation between these two UI components in order to align them properly. So I'll say layout below, and the id of my text view is txt1. Now as you can see, here is my button residing on the left side of my screen. So that's it for the RelativeLayout. And the next thing I want is the LinearLayout, and the width to be match parent and the height to be wrap content. Okay, and remember one thing, by default the orientation of the LinearLayout will be set to horizontal, but in this layout we need the LinearLayout to be of vertical type. So we will change the orientation. So I will say orientation to be vertical. Okay, so the next thing that I want okay, so let's just close this LinearLayout and add the UI components inside it. So as you can see, it is giving me an error that the constraints are not assigned. So let's just assign the constraint to it. So I will use the same constraint that I want the top to the bottom of should I have to write the whole thing? Okay, so constraint top to the bottom of this button, id @sign plus id, and the id of my button is txt1. No, it is button rel, btn rel. Okay, again there is an error. Okay, so we need to specify the RelativeLayout here actually. So I have not mentioned the id, so I'll say id to be rel1. So I'll say rel1 here. Okay, so as you can see, here is our LinearLayout now. Okay, so let's just add the UI elements here. So the first thing that I want is, let's just do one thing, let's just drag and just copy and paste things here. Let's just remove this ID because we don't need them, and this one too. Okay, but we want the things to be centered. So instead of specifying the layout gravity to each and every element, what I want to do is specify the gravity attribute right here, and I can say center horizontally. And now as you can see, my layout is now centered, but the text view is not, so I'll again say gravity to be center horizontal. Okay, the text view was centered, but because of the width to be match parent, it was not showing me. Okay, so yeah, that's it. And the last thing that we need, and the most difficult thing I guess for you, was to align these 9 buttons next to each other. But believe me, it is very simple thing. So again, we are going to use the linear layout here, and I will set the width to the match parent and height to the wrap content. So let me just add the constraint top to bottom of, I will say, the layout ID. Okay, so I need to specify the ID here, so I'll say line1. So I'll say line1. Okay, yeah, that's fine. So let's just close this. No, not this one. Okay, so now what we need to do is just simply put 9 buttons in it. So I'll just copy this thing and I'll paste it, and now I'm going to paste or duplicate this thing several times. So I'll say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and let's just change. As you can see, the default orientation was horizontal. The buttons are aligned next to each other. So I only want to change the text, so it will be 1, it will be 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9. So now as you can see, you can identify that properly. Now if I run this code right now, you can see you will not able to actually see these buttons, this whole button. You will be able to see some of them, I guess up to the 5, and yeah, as you can see, you are able to see up to the 5th one, and the 5th one is also a little bit not visible. So how we can fit this whole button inside our screen? Remember, I told you that there is a magical attribute which divides every UI element to the equal proportion. Yeah, I am talking about the layout width. So I can just simply assign layout width to 1, and I can just simply copy this thing, and I can just simply paste this thing in every button. And now as you can see, the layout, every 9 buttons are visible on the screen. Okay, so that's how you can use layout width to equally distribute the proportion of the screen among the UI elements. So now if I run this code, you will be able to see all the 9 buttons. So as you can see now, the 9 buttons are visible on my screen. So that was it for this lecture. So in this lecture we have studied about the layouts, that what are the layouts and why we need to use them, and we have studied about 3 different layouts that are constraint layout, relative layout and the linear layout. And we have also see that how we can use the linear layout to build UI, and that is the layout, and we have designed a layout using the relative layout and the constraint layout too. And then finally, we have also designed a layout with the combination of the constraint layout as our root layout and the linear layout and the relative layout. And we have also studied about the layout weight attribute, that how we can use it inside the linear layout to magically assign the equal proportion among the UI elements inside the layout container. Okay, so basically layout was a container which holds the UI element. So I guess that was enough for this lecture. You can always play with these attributes with your own in order to see that how big and what are the different kind of things that you can do with these layouts. Okay, so there are many more stuff that you should know about this linear layout, but I particularly added some picked some attributes and some things that you must know in order to get started with these layouts, and the other stuff you will learn as we will move along and move forward to this course. So that was it for this lecture, and see you in the next video.